You're listening to the Beat Motel Zine podcast, and we need to warn you that we use words like shit, bollocks, scrotics, fuck, anarcho-syndicalist, and cunt, and we don't normally beat those words out, apart from the word cunt, because we're not total animals. Now, we know as well as you that your children can hear these words on any street in Britain, possibly any street anywhere in the world, but we also appreciate that you may not want to invite these words into your home if you have children or sensitive pets nearby whilst listening to this podcast. So listener discretion is advised. That being said, if your children aren't allergic to hearing words like fuck, shit, buttocks or hind penis, they might learn something from listening to this podcast, although probably not, because the quality of our educational content is quite poor. So there you go, fuckers, buckle in and let's get started.
Hind penis.
Yeah, hind penis.
It's a hind penis.
I wanted something that sounded rude, but wasn't all that shocking to sort of slightly leave in the disclaimer there.
Fair enough. I guess I should say hello. Welcome to Beat Motel. We're taking a bit of a change in the books this time, and it's a short one, so we're trying to get to the point of things. I'm Sam. With me today is our friend Andrew.
Hello.
Say hello, Andrew. Thank you.
Hello, Andrew.
And hello, Andrew. And what's the theme today, Andrew?
The theme is bass. How low can you go? In brackets, morally. I just want to point out, I'm afraid the new sign hasn't arrived, so I'm still using the old one there. You can probably hear on the microphone. New microphone,
and it's a bit further from your face, so we can see the beautiful features. We don't have time to go into what has happened to your tooth.
And Bill will just mention that this is on YouTube as well now, so there is visual gags. No visual knob gags, hopefully, but
so I took that as bass riffs, and you took a bit of a different direction in some ways.
I don't know if I did. It possibly came about because you and I are both bassists.
Yes, I really struggled narrowing it down to 4 tracks. I think this may be the first of many bass themed episodes.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, should we get on with it then?
Yeah. See, I'm because you're the host. I'm not going to prompt you at all. I'm just going to let you do it.
So, riff of the week. We're going to start with yours. Do you want to? Shall I just play it and then we'll get to it?
Yeah, play it and I'll explain it.
Can I ask, before we get into that, is the bleeps and skipping coming across to you?
The bleeps and crackles are there, but it won't be on the final recording.
Okay, sure.
That's just what we're hearing. The listeners shouldn't hear that.
Okay, good to know, because otherwise I need to figure out another way of recording. These teething issues. Anyway, Andrew, go.
That is Bert Jansch. He was in another band called Pentangle, but this is from a solo album of his called, and I know it sounds so metal, doesn't it? A solo album he did in the 70s called shit. I can't remember what it's called. That track's called
interesting.
That track's called Bittern, though, and I chose it because, for one thing, I've been choosing a lot of metal recently for my riff of the week, and I thought the simplicity of that is so wonderful. It is just a double bass, on brand, double bass and guitar, but the way they weave around each other, I just think is really charming. It's got quite a lot of oomph to it for something that Bert Jansch was considered folk. Well, considered folk. He was folk. I don't mean he was folk as in he was human. I want to just say, listeners, this is the earliest in the morning we've recorded a podcast so far. I'm not sure I'm all that with it yet. I do have
coffee. Not firing on all cylinders. I was your choices this week surprised me, and this was one of those. There was that surprised me, but I've taken the same sort of thing. I've thought that it's sort of I think, yeah, I do lean to metal quite a lot at the moment, which is mostly reflective of that, not my musical taste, but in a way the musical media that I just sort of find myself browsing when I'm bored. Um, and I've sort of decided to challenge myself to not pick so much metal and also sort of try to emphasize other aspects of music I like. And with that, we're going to start with my track of the week, which is this. Hey.
Nice.
So that was, do you want to guess?
God, fuck knows. It was wonderful though.
That was Mary Halverson, who is a
Oh,
New
fuck no, I wouldn't
York.
have got that.
Yeah, she's played with musicians you would have heard of. She was in a band with Trevor Dunn, who was the bassist in Melvins for a bit, and also, I mean, who hasn't played a bass in Melvins for a bit? But he was also in Mr. Bungle, I believe, and a few other sort
Oh,
of those
right.
avant-garde. But he's sort of, I think his choice of medium is for his own expression is jazz, and she's an experimental New York jazz guitarist. She's written some. She did an album a few years ago where she got Robert Wyatt to come out of retirement and sing on a few songs, and yeah, she put out an album. I think two albums last year. One which is sort of with a more traditional jazz guitar setup, and the other one which is with like a small chamber ensemble.
I think it was a
But
chamber pot for some reason.
chamber pod, just her on a small chamber pod, and I was just listening around. I was listening to that music whilst I was hacking away at some work, and it just hit me. It was really good.
It's a very nice one.
And the album, which is what called Amaryllis, I think something like that, is excellent. Really, really good. One of the
Amaryllis a
best.
flower.
I think so. Yeah.
Sorry, somebody's just walked in the room. Hello, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Sorry, we're recording at the moment. Carry on. You're the host, Sam. Keep it
I am
moving.
the host. No, I know I'm the host, but I also feel rude to interrupt when you're being interrupted and trying
You're,
to deal with it.
you're so polite that you're in Helsinki, I'm in Ipswich, and you don't want to be impolite to the person who can't hear you, who's in the room with me. that is super polite. You're very
Well, I
lovely.
didn't want to be. I can't talk when someone else is. I can't think so clearly when someone else is doing something
Well,
else.
I think I want to introduce now. Richard, can you come say hello, please? So this is my friend Richard.
In shot.
Yeah. So podcast listeners, this is Richard, who was I know you from loads of bands. Dangerous Close
Oh,
was
yes.
Penny
Yep.
Red. Were you in
Yep.
Penny Red?
I was in Penny Red, yes.
You were in
I've
Penny
seen
Red,
it.
yeah. And there you go. So
Thank you.
that's probably not going to mean so much to anyone who's not watching on YouTube, but that was Richard. Thank you.
Okay, so
That's
we
our
get
first guest.
That's our first guest between you and I. Yes, you've done loads of guests, but anyway, first bass of the week goes to this. Oh, volume's
This one
gone
of your,
down.
I'm really excited because the reason we switched like this is I always knew Sam's choices. So we switched. Oh. Hi. I'd be amazed if anyone doesn't know what that is.
I had no idea. My mum was a big fan of that band, but
I am genuinely surprised by that.
and she saw them at the. She always, I think she saw them at the Royal Albert Hall.
That's where that recording's from.
And
I'm pretty sure.
Well, she saw them at least once, but yeah, and she liked to go on about Ginger Baker. I don't know why. The Ginger Baker documentary is brilliant, but who was that?
That was Cream with Crossroads, and I chose it because, for one thing, I think it might be the first song I ever heard that I realised what a bass guitar even was. We're listening to it at Friends of the Family, and my dad, the dad of the family, was a bassist, and my dad put that on when he used to take music to other people's houses back in the 18th century. And he said, "Listen to this bass playing," and I was like, "What's bass playing?" Because obviously on that track, especially that bit, a lot of people would just hear the guitar, and that's really it. It's so dominant. But really, Eric Clapton's guitar there, Eric Clapton, the racist wanker's guitar there, is just doing widdly, widdly, widdly all over the place. But the bass playing there is just bloody wonderful.
He's doing a really nice job between going off on his own and then holding it back. He sort of keeps. He sort of goes. He doesn't venture too far from the source, but he does venture from it, and then he's sort of locking it all in. And it's quite. Someone said to me that if you want to listen to sort of how to listen to jazz, not said to me. This is a thing I've said before. Adam Needley, who is a YouTube and other really informative, very well read jazz musician or jazz fusion musician, said in one of the episodes that if you want to sort of understand jazz, listen to the bass first. And that's sort of what he's doing, is that he's holding, with Ginger Baker's doing, driving everything, the bass is holding everything together. And he's doing a really good job of that. It's more, in a way, it's more jazz than it is jazz rock in a way.
The other thing that kind of makes it slightly jazzy is that he was also mucking about with the rhythm. You know, obviously, say Ginger Baker on drums driving it forward. It's Jack Bruce, the bassist. Just in case anyone didn't know, I shouldn't assume everyone would. And there's little bits where and it just, the interplay is just lovely. The rest of Cream I find a bit twee and a bit annoying, but that track is just so great.
Yeah,
it's not their song. It's a I wouldn't say it's a classical song, but it's certainly 1920s or sort of Depression era blues track. Generally,
Fair
Cream
enough.
didn't wander that far away from that. But right, so your first choice, I'm quite excited because I've got
My
no
first
idea what it
choice.
is. No idea at all. Would not have guessed that.
I mean, how good is that bass line?
Is that Donald Duck?
That's Donald Duck and the Mickey Mouse 5.
No, the bass is Donald in brackets Duck. Done.
No. That is actually the guy. I looked into this. The guy he is called. I got my notes up. He is called Wilton Felder.
Wow.
He was like a session bassist and a professional jazz saxophonist.
God, just not content with just one instrument, but Donald Duck Dunn was one of the Motown.
Yeah,
Mostly
this guy was one of the Motown ones. He was like the West Coast Motown guy in the 60s, I think. Whereas, but the other one is James Jamerson, and you know, like baseline wise, I was about to go for James Jamerson, but I don't know. When I was in my early 20s, I went and took some bass lessons, precisely for the reason
I didn't know you could get bass lessons.
Well, yeah, this guy's but I went to get them precisely for the reason that I played a lot of metal, I played a lot of punk and ska, and I knew how to do that. I knew those ideas. Whereas I sort of went to expand my palette, and that was one of the first things that he introduced me to. And it's the timing of it is so precise, and it's not bang. It's not even on the one and. It's the one A and E. So it's like on the point. You know, it's on the point of the half step.
That's the same with reggae,
note.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
reggae's sort of behind the beat slightly.
And yeah, it's just such a solid bass line, and I went for classic bass lines because I couldn't. I went for my choice. My way of choosing stuff was bass lines that I sing to myself because I played them so much.
Well, that one's brilliant. You picked up a really interesting point that I nearly chose a Duran Duran track. Now, not a fan of Duran Duran, not a fan of Jackson 5 or Michael Jackson, really, although growing up in the 80s, it was hard to avoid. You could buy that Bad album, you could buy anywhere. They literally sold it. News agents it went far beyond record shops. Anyone who had a place that could take money would try and sell that. But Duran Duran, I've realised recently, the bass playing on a lot of Duran Duran tracks is phenomenally good. Just really, really good. And in my head, I've just put the connection together between a band that we're going to play later on and Duran Duran's bass playing style. I can't remember the guy's name. Let's call him Bobby Bass.
But I would like to say I grew up on Michael Jackson, and I have a deep, deep love for mostly 60s Motown stuff. I just think, and also the bass player, James Jameson, was such an amazing musician. It's said that they were all jazz musicians. They all just sort of on the off hours, they all just went down and made some more money playing jazz. And also that's what they sort of like to do. But it was said, it was sort of the idea, apparently the idea was that when everybody was given their music, James Jameson could read it so quickly that he used to play practical jokes on everybody else whilst they were trying to get together with their own charts.
No one likes the bassist playing jokes.
No, because but he was so good. Anyway, next track, because we're on a time limit.
Oh, yeah, this is a short... So I chose that, I mean, because there is just bass, so it's quite blatant, but that is Pentangle. So the band, the chap I mentioned earlier, Bert Jansch, that's his band, and that clip took a little bit of finding because it's from a live performance that was recorded in a studio, and it's not on the standard song. The song's called Reflection. The bass playing's still good on it, but there's a bunch of stuff started popping up on YouTube in the last few years where people are doing 4K transfers. So when things were originally filmed, if they were filmed on film, the quality is still like much, much higher than even 4K. And this is what kickstarted the Pink Floyd episode that I did yonks and yonks ago with Simon Fimbo. But the bass playing style there is so wild, and it's got the slides and the aggression and it's got the real thump on the fretboard. That's like 1969 or something. That real thump on the fretboard that you get with psychobilly bassists.
Well, I was listening. I didn't know who Pentagram was when I was putting this together, so I did a bit of investigation because the bassist he's not really a folk bassist. He's more of a jazz bassist, and he's almost like straight up jazz bassist who just happens to be in a folk band. And I looked at one of their sort of seminal recordings, and it has a cover of a Mingus.
Right, because I'm on a journey. Well, me and my wife are on a journey with
Where are you going?
Kind of to the land of psych folk, but kind of folk in general. Because I'm yet to hear anything by Pentangle that I didn't like. I need to find an album. A lot of bands that I get into, I want to find a jumping in point.
Well, the whole band didn't do. It's more like it's a solo bass rendition, and to take on a Mingus song as a solo bassist means you got to have your chops. And the guy's very impressive. He's a really, really good bassist.
Danny Thompson, I think his name is.
Yeah, and I don't get what's folk about him whatsoever. He is jazz.
I love that. That's cool. I'll put the clip. I'll put the live studio recording in the. God, words is not good happening today. I'll put the video in the show notes.
Sure. Next track.
Woo! What a cut! that was beautifully done, Sam. I really like that. Listener, I'm normally the one who does what we call the clipping, to getting the tracks together. But that's wonderful. Just getting that douche.
Yeah.
So, who was that?
Can you guess?
Rush is about as close as I can get.
No, Guns N' Roses.
No, I wouldn't know. Wouldn't know at all.
Guns N' Roses, the track is My Michelle, and it's from the first album, which is one of the greatest debut albums by any band ever. Use Your Illusion. No, it's not Use Your Illusion. That's what am I doing?
Lies was first.
Appetite for Destruction.
That's not their first album. No, it's not. Well, no, I'm not going to argue with you. I know nothing about Guns N' Roses apart from the fact I lost a girlfriend once because I told her Slash was shit.
Oh, well, you were wrong. And what's the bassist called? Duff McKagan, I think, is a completely underrated musician. I think he gives Guns N' Roses its actually unique chord sensibility because I've heard solo albums of his, and he plays actually through that whole album. He plays really nice melodic lines and a lot of fun to play. And I just love that intro, sort of like, he's playing a lead line basically with a bass, and then you have that growl when he hits that.
Oh yeah, that's lovely. The little low note,
and it just sort of like you have this gentle sort of intro, and then you just have that like this is the aggression that is just hinted at that's going to hit you in a second, and it's just really really nicely done.
The most eloquent and appealing description of anything to do with Guns N' Roses I've ever heard. He was committing what a younger me would have thought of as a bass crime during that. He had a bit of chorus and a bit of flanger on it, which was such an 80s thing. And I considered it a crime against bass humanity until I got into or heard some early, Magazine? Who was the bassist of Magazine?
I don't know.
Oh, shit, I'm going to have to look it up. But Barry something. I'm going to look it up.
Barry Gibbons.
Barry, don't, because I'll go, yeah, probably. But Magazine, so the band that was formed after, it was like a splinter of the Buzzcocks. And I got given a copy of Barry Adamson. Oh, fuck's sake. Barry Adamson was the bassist. And he uses that sort of slimy, flangery thing. But his solo album's really, really, really good. Really brilliant. In fact, if you like some of the current Six Music hot stuff, like the son of the guy who did Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick. This is terrible.
Ian Jury's son.
Baxter Jury. If you like Baxter Jury stuff, which I do, I think it's really interesting music. Then yeah, the Barry Adamson album solo stuff's well worth looking up. So there you go. That's the longest conversation anyone's ever had around bass flanger.
Bass flanger, that's true. Because, it is a mostly very rarely used thing. Next thing, talking about a flanging bassist. Come on.
One of the joys of doing the podcast and listening to music through, I've got studio monitoring headphones, is I hear stuff in tracks that I've known for 30 years that I've never heard before. There's little squeaky top bits in there I've not heard. And that was Blur with Won't Do It, which was one of the B-sides of the remix of There's No Other Way. Because sometimes a single would be released and the record label would release a remix for single version. In fact, that's the only time I can think of it ever happening. But Alex James, the Tory cheesemaker, his bass playing on that is, I based all my bass playing pretty much on that track when I first started, and I couldn't play like that for shit. I can't think of anyone who can. It's just all over the place. He's got to have a natural ear. He's got to have an ability just to let his fingers do what he wants. I can't even imagine that's actually written, that bass.
I think it's quite. I was thinking this, and I'll get to it in a bit. But yeah, he's sadly, great bass player, and I think we should do maybe our next one on musicians that we hate, but also we really love.
I don't hate him.
I
don't hate him.
I don't know. I
think
saw his Instagram.
End, but
No, okay. People we don't enjoy the exposure of in other forms than their music. But yeah, it has relationship to what that Cream bassist was doing as well, which was ever so slightly going off on its own thing, but then sort of pulling it back and being sort of the point of connection between the whole band.
Love Graham Coxon's guitar playing on that. It's like Robert Fripp in a really bad mood or something.
I just want to make noise.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Love it.
Okay, next one.
Ooh, let me feel your heartbeat. Grow faster, faster. Can you feel my love heat? Come on, see to my heart, seed of love, and tell me how do you feel right after all? I'd like for you and I to go romancing. Say the word, your wish is my command. Ooh, love.
Wow. Queen was going to come up sooner or later. With
I mean,
choices.
John Deacon is amazing. Talk about a bassist who has a natural ear. Joey Deacon is amazing as well.
Sorry, I'm not going to go to hell for that. Queen bassist Joey Deacon. God, that's going to mean nothing to someone who didn't grow up watching Blue Peter in the 80s.
But yeah, so what I loved about that was sort of the song is a masterclass. I think in a way that every John Deacon bass line is a masterclass, but that one is particularly good in that he's particularly brilliant at evolving a bass line, and the whole band is like this. I'm not sure so much about the drums, but certainly Brian May and Freddie Mercury and John Deacon were brilliant at making all their parts movements rather than I'm just going to play the same bass riff 4 times.
Never considered that at all. This is one of the many joys of doing this podcast. Is you really open, you've really enhanced my listening ability.
We do. Yeah, you've done the same for me. But for me, I learned how to play. This is one of this is a song that I learned how to play the bass riff of, and it's so cleverly put together because it's sort of like the first time he plays first time they use those chords, the bass is playing a similar thing, but it's different. And then the next time they play it, he's getting more, and he goes from being very straightforward to then being more elaborate, to then being even more elaborate. And there's also like all these nice sort of punctuation. His syncopation game is next to, it's next level compared to a lot of people. And I just think that it's a masterclass in restraint in a way, because he's sort of hinting at what he could do and how far he could go. But he's going, nah, actually, I'm just going to keep everything on and only emphasize things and only bring in things that are sort of interesting to bring in rather than having to play every single note that you can play all the time. Which is an interesting thing to go on to our next classic British pop group. I mean, listening to things in 30 seconds just allows you to get to a detail that you might otherwise skip thanks for recording your snot, Mr. Rotten.
Is that what it is?
Is him going...
Oh, I didn't get that. I like the beginning of that track. The start is so weird. It's like, I didn't even know if they like put their hands on the reel to reel when they were doing the master transfer or something. But there's also something weird happens with the bass. Can you play it again? Because I wanted to hear the snot. But listen, the bass sort of goes wrong. There. What is that? Oh, I hear it. Yeah, I hear it all now. Sammy, all right. Sam's having a coughing fit here. So if you've not checked out YouTube yet, then skip to the 31-minute mark of this episode if you want to see Sam his esophagus trying to leave his face.
Try not to drink water down the wrong hole.
Just like what you're not seeing if you're not watching YouTube is Sam trying to drink water like an elephant, but using his cock instead of his snout. So that was Poptones by. Now I'm not sure at that phase whether it was Pill or Public Image Limited. I get a bit hazy on when it changes, but that bassist was Jar Wobble, and that's just it's so good.
It wobbles.
I can't even say what's so great about Jar Wobble. It's almost like playing dub, but that's on.
I think it sort of has a similar aspect. Well, it is complete dub, but it has a similar aspect of, like it's related to my feelings about the first Slits album, which is it's so wrong it's right.
Yeah. No, yeah, I know what you mean, and that weird wrong note. Can you hear that noise?
Yeah. What's that?
My studio is on an industrial estate, which might not be the wisest of choices. That's a pallet truck being dragged along by. There's a place over there called. I'm not going to say what they're called, but it's a place that gathers tools together and sends them to Africa, which is smart, which is a good thing. Yeah. Right, I've literally got a couple of minutes, and I'm going to have to go.
I have to do this. I had to do this, Andrew. I'm sorry. I was so tempted.
Big famous band.
I was so tempted to do all my choices as Primus.
Do them all Primus.
Yes. I had to pull myself back because otherwise it would have worked for a short episode, actually. It would have worked really well. Here's Primus again.
God, that's almost like a joke from Airplane, that is. I'd like some light reading. Right, was he like famous straight tennis players or something like that? The shortest episode, Queen's best hip hop. just nothing. Well, I suppose Under Pressure, possibly. So that was Primus, and what nonsense was that?
That was Jerry. Jerry was a race car driver, and that album has sold over 1 million copies in the US alone.
Can you get
how weird is that?
Can you get like Stockholm syndrome with bands? Like you hate it so much, and then you hear it so many times, it starts to sound familiar, and you start to enjoy it.
Well, that's what I feel like about Queen's 80s, most of the Queen 80s output, but I've heard it so much I start to really love it. You got to go.
I know, I've just remembered that we've got some correspondence. Oh, shit, I need to find it.
I just don't understand. I mean, I understand the voice is repulsive, and it's like, yeah, it's up there with one of those voices of like, you gotta, it's a hard thing to love. But the music, I mean, the guitar line is so good, and the bass is just so unique. There's that thing where So Winamp used to have, when you used to sort of put together all your stuff and you start to put them into genres, Winamp had one genre which was just Primus.
Really?
Yeah.
Winamp, it really whips the llama's ass. That's what it used to say. I'm desperately trying to find the correspondence.
We had one. Do you
Go
not
on,
want to? Do you want? You don't want to cut. You don't want to. You don't want to comment anymore on your
You've got the
relationship to
correspondence?
Primus.
No.
I've got one from your friend Gareth Patch,
Mhm.
who said, "I like the way you, Andrew, said JC and the Lockabillys all the way through the podcast."
Yeah, so the last live review, I spoke with great enthusiasm about JC and the Lockabillys, and they are in fact called JS and the Lockabillys, which, I may not be accurate, but I am consistently inaccurate. I had a ton of correspondence that is really, really special, but I'm not going to cram it into this episode, so I'll put it into the next one. I'm going to have to go right now because I've got another meeting. I've got a meeting starting in 4 minutes, and I'm a middle-aged man who needs the toilet.
Just use the just go in the glass. I can see the glass. It already looks like piss.
Well, it's Barocca, so my piss will come out the colour of Barocca anyway.
Radioactive.
Do you know, interesting fact, the average male's bladder holds exactly a pint. So a pint glass is just about enough, even if you're really busting. I didn't try.
Why not give it a go?
Why not give it a go? I'm going to go.
Okay, Andrew. Thank you very much for your company. Lovely to see you.
Love you. You need to press stop, and then it needs to upload the.
I know. Thanks, Dad. I'm gonna stop the podcast now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Goodbye, good luck, and have a lovely time. Hey, hey.